This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide provides extended activity on the toughest weeds like kochia, wild buckwheat, cleavers, Russian thistle, and many more. See your local retailer today for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day. And also a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, it's Friday, which means we have a RealAg Issues Panel. For you, those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Brandon, Manitoba. I spoke yesterday at the Manitoba Beef Producer Meeting, had a great time. This has been a real traveling Wilbury kind of week. Next week is not much better. So it's been great to connect with the audience and met so many fans of not only this show, but people that have been loyal newsletter readers from RealAgriculture.com for a long time. It is so great to interact with people out there in the audience. So if you do see me at one of these meetings or these conventions and you think I'm busy, I'm never too busy to have conversations with you out there in the RealAg audience. So I do appreciate it very, very much. Speaking of next week, I'm going to be at the Louisville Farm Show, the National Farm Machinery Show on Wednesday for the day. And then I'm also going to be at a big Cargill Market Sense meeting on Thursday in Red Deer, Alberta. Really looking forward to that one. We'll be doing a live recording of this show that'll appear next Friday. We're going to focus actually on the clean fuel regulation, and the opportunity for renewable diesel will really be the focus of the show. So looking forward to doing that with Cargill Market Sense next week. In Louisville, we're going to be with Syngenta Canada. So have a show there as well. So we got a lot of stuff happening next week, zipping across North America back and forth. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Today on the RealAg Issues Panel, we've got Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner, of course, of RealAgriculture. We'll also be joined by Jeff Nielsen. He is a farmer from Olds, Alberta. Also owns a sports bar now too. What's up with that? We'll find out what Jeff's been doing. Really looking forward to breaking down all the issues. We had Senator Black talk about 282 yesterday in the Senate. We got some updated political polling from Advocates Data. The Conservatives continue to gain in their lead over the Liberals. We'll talk a little bit about the carbon tax. We got a lot of stuff to chat about here today, and I'm looking forward to it. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can always send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can find us across all the social media platforms. You are also welcome to call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we've got 4 segments, the RealAg Issues Panel. Jeff, Lyndsey, Kelvin, stand by, and we'll be right back right after this. Today's show is brought to you by Alltech. Encourage you to go to alltech.com. Also joining us right now, it is Martha Baker, and she is the Alltech sales manager. Now, Aglin, that's the product?
So Aglin is a new product. It is a blend of essential oils, so it's an all-natural product, non-antibiotic, non-synthetic product. And what it does is on a dairy side, it increases fat protein corrected milk flow by 2 to 4 pounds, 1 to 2 kilos, with like 99% repeatability. On the beef side, what we see is an improvement in feed efficiency, upwards of 7%. We see an increase in ADG and fewer days on feed.
Feed additive then, or what? How are we incorporating it into the animal?
Yeah, it is a feed additive. The feed rate's only 1 gram per head on a dairy side and 200 milligrams per kilo of body weight on the beef side.
You buy one skin of that stuff and it's lasting a long time.
It does. It does, absolutely.
Through a growing storm of kochia, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. Here for your farm, here for your family. Co-op, learn more by going to Co-op's website. Okay, mark this down. co-op.crs/farm. Or just Google Co-op in Saskatchewan. It might be a little bit easier. Okay, let's dig in here on the RealAg Issues Panel. We got lots to discuss here on this Friday. First up, it is Kelvin Heppner coming out of, well, snowy Manitoba. Maybe. I'm in Brandon still, Kelvin. It's snowy here right now. What are you seeing down there in Altona?
We have a skiff of snow. It's finally turned slightly cold here in the last 24 hours after, basically 2.5 weeks of above zero, melting, foggy, messy weather. And yeah, a bit of a taste of winter here again in the last day.
Okay. It's beginning to feel a little bit like winter again, it seems. Lyndsey, what's going on? I was in Toronto on Tuesday, and it was beautiful. What are you experiencing? Like, I've got like an on-the-ground weather report for most of Canada here this week. What did you experience, Lyndsey, today? What's weather like outside?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but sorry, Kelvin, but we're 7 degrees today and beautiful. And I'm, a long way from Toronto, but that beautiful weather has sort of continued for us as well. It does feel like we're a month ahead. It feels like maple syrup weather. It feels like early March for us. But I'm told the end of the month is not going to be so kind. So all I know is I am incredibly grateful that I don't live in Nova Scotia or Cape Breton. I do have farmer friends from there who have sent me many images of digging out from over 3 feet of snow in Cape Breton that fell in 2-3 days. So yeah, very thankful. We're melting here. Nothing like that.
Well, and right now it's just a hassle trying to dig out, right? It's what happens when it all melts.
Well, and Manitoba's facing some of those issues as well because it got so warm and then this freeze comes in. I know Kelvin's been sharing some stories of people that are worried about, culverts freezing up and not being able to move water and
it's happening. We had water running off the fields this week and accumulating. So ditches are full and culverts are full, and it's going to freeze hard, it looks like, based on the forecast. So, spring, whenever it comes again, will be interesting because it felt like it was April here the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Yeah. Okay. Also joining us this week is Jeff Nielsen out of Olds, Alberta. Jeff, I've been nowhere near Olds this week, so you're on your own here. What's the weather in Olds like?
We're probably just below freezing this week, and we had our warm week, maybe 10 days of actually mid-teens, and we had runoff too, and the creeks are running. There's no drifting from any of the earlier storms, so the creeks just let go, but I don't think we had the culvert problem yet because and it does drain pretty good, but then we got another couple inches of snow, so everything turned white again, but yeah, we haven't had a lot of snow all winter long.
You want to keep on hearing is, and I don't know if it's just because we don't get as much snow as we used to in some of the parts of the country, but everyone's like, winter snow doesn't matter. We're spring snow. That's where it really matters. That's always been the way in southern Alberta, but I'm hearing it seems like across a wider geography, it seems. But I do want to give a bit of a shout out. On Thursday, I spoke at the Manitoba Beef Producer Annual General Meeting. It was lots of fun. Talked about policy and politics and production issues centered around the beef industry. And I got to give a big shout out to Owen. Owen listens to the show. I think he said he started listening. He's a young guy. He started listening to the show last summer. He listens to the show every single day. So big shout out to Owen for listening. And actually at the banquet last night, the reception, the line, if you can imagine, the lineup for the bar was quite long. I bailed on it because I wanted to talk to Al Mussel from Cappy, who was also speaking at the conference. And I was in line with Owen. I bailed on it, went to go talk to Al. All of a sudden, Owen brought me up a drink. And I was like, he's like, for a speech that you just gave, you deserve a drink. And I really appreciate Owen for buying me a glass of wine as well. Okay, let's dig into some of the issues here. So we released the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index data for January. I've described it on Wednesday's show as an overall quite a negative tone when we look at the overall sentiment of farmers across the country. East and West, very similar. There's not differences, so it's not just about the drought in the West that's dragging it all down. Overall, across the country, farmers feeling a little bit blue about 2024. Lyndsey, when you look at the graph and the data, what sticks out to you?
All I hear are sad trombones. Just wah wah, like, and it's so, but I'm not entirely surprised. So I know, internally we've had a lot of discussions, and we've had more of a chance maybe to digest some of this data. But I do think you're right. The fact that there's no discrepancy between East and West, or a very large one, is an interesting one, because of course, we could certainly see if you're still short of moisture in the West, there's a lot to worry about. But Eastern farmers aren't feeling great either. And so we're seeing definitely where, whether that's crop prices, whether that's input costs, whether it's the political scene, all of these things, kind of converging. I have to say, weather-wise, I don't know that there's a ton to complain about here in Ontario. So the outlook for, the growing season seems like it should be okay. But overall, we just are not feeling great about the year ahead, whether that's our marketing, whether it's our costs, our profitability, just not feeling it.
Yeah, we look at the open-ended responses, a lot of mentions of the Trudeau government and their policies, specifically the carbon tax, Jeff. When you look at your margins on the crops that you may plant this year, I would imagine they're not looking as rosy as maybe some of the past years.
No, I was doing some pricing yesterday because you're still playing your mind. You always set at the harvest time what you're going to grow on that land for the next year, but you can play with it a bit. Some new malt prices came out this week, so you're thinking of that and thinking of, well, what can CPS wheat do? Because I grow a lot of CPS wheat in this area. And then you kind of look at the canola market too, and you're going, oh, geez, look at what it's done the last 3 months. And it just kind of scares you. We're back to normal pricing now, after a couple of years where it's good. Yeah, I read the report. I'm just looking at that one slide now, and you can see the sentiment. Like Lyndsey says, it's negative out there. I think one thing we can probably hold some faith in is that the last slide or last part, the state of mental health, like we're very resilient. Yes, there's pockets. Yes, we have issues, but it's not our first rodeo when it comes to all the issues when it comes to farming, and it weighs on you highly. But I think we've built a strong resistance into a lot of these changes. It affects us, all of us, differently. But I take that as a positive that we can be fairly level on our mental state and try to deal with all the variables.
Kelvin, one of the pieces of data that stuck out to me was, I think it was like a 56 out of 200, so quite a bit below the neutral line, was farmers answering the question, the next 5 years, will the Canadian ag economy have widespread good times or widespread bad times? Clearly more of a bad time feeling. That's going out 60 months. That to me really stood out.
Yeah, and maybe it's just the accumulation of a bunch of different things, whether it's in the political realm, the marketing, the economic side of things. Yeah, and I think we do tend to be maybe a little bit more pessimistic or just in terms of anticipating risk in the future. The longer the time horizon goes out, maybe we add a little bit more risk to it. I'm not sure, but even that upfront question, I know in the discussion video around this survey release with Justin Funk of Agri Studies, you talk about the question or the perception of risk in 2024 versus last year. And what was it? 76%, a good 3/4 of respondents say this year is going to be more risky than last year. And basically another quarter said it could be about the same. Almost nobody said less risky. So right there's a lot of concern. And one thing that we've also noted and discussed this week, and I maybe some of our audience can pitch in here with their thoughts, the U.S. Farmer Sentiment Index coming from Purdue CME Group doesn't show the same level of decline in farmer outlook or sentiment. And so we're curious now why there seems to be a difference on the Canada-US border.
Yeah, the similarity is that current and future are pretty close to each other in both countries. The gap is that American farmers are positive. They're just above 100, like around 110 on both those indexes, and we're in the 60s. That's a pretty substantial difference. Growing some of the same crops, facing some of the same challenges. Now, the two audiences that I've spoke to this week, they've yelled out subsidies, that the American farmer gets more subsidies, so therefore that's the difference. That's a pretty big gap. I think that's a part of it, maybe. Maybe they feel there's more of a backstop. We have backstops too. We don't have the ad hoc programming historically that they have. But go ahead.
U.S. government structure, just the way the electoral system is set up, we have seen over the years agriculture still has quite a bit more sway and leverage in U.S. politics than what Canadian agriculture has in Canadian politics. So that could be a factor in it.
Canadian culture. One of the questions is, like, is it a cultural thing, or maybe Canadians are right to be that pessimistic, and the Americans are overly optimistic. I don't know. We'll know, at 12 months from now. But Lyndsey?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say one of them is maybe right, or it's somewhere in between, right? So maybe it's not going to be that good, but it's not going to be that bad, and it's going to fall somewhere in between. I think it is fascinating to think, we're on the same continent, we share some of the same geographies. There's always regional differences, but I think, we're also participating in a global market that, the U.S. is a completely different entity than Canada is. And so that also, we sort of ride the U.S.'s coattails on a lot of things. So, does that make the Canadian farmer just in some ways less optimistic because we're not the driver of some of this change or some of these decisions? Maybe. So I think it is, in a lot of ways, it's an identity, it's a cultural difference, and we'll see who was right in a year or two.
Maybe a lot of political differences too. We definitely have that. You have a U.S. election coming up. If Trump even gets allowed to be a candidate, will he come into play? He's going to impose probably more sanctions to other countries. That I don't know. I'm on the fence when it comes to the farmer side on that. But you look at, of course, you mentioned, Shaun, the carbon tax up here in Canada. That is a weight on Canadian ag shoulders, and we look across the line and we don't see that weight. So, there's the optimism and pessimism on that part, and you see the differences between our cousins across the line.
Yeah, and you know what I have said about when I look at the open-end responses and you see carbon tax, whatever the reality is of that cost and the percentage of loss or how that is relative to your business is irrelevant. The perception is it's a very dark black cloud, and it's impacting how farmers feel, right? Their sentiment towards the current and future farm financial performance, for sure. Hey, we got to take a break. You're listening to RealAg Radio, RealAg Issues Panel, Jeff Nielsen, Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, and we'll be right back right after this.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
There's power, and then there's superpower. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed from New Farm. Take control. Eliminate weed competition and start clean in spring. Manage weeds early in canola, cereals, and pulses. Conquer, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO. Convenient formulations and multiple modes of action. Add more power to glyphosate, more benefits to your burn down. Go to newfarm.ca/burndown.
Kelvin, you all ready for spring?
Not really, no.
Ooh, you're running it. Make sure, okay, listen, if you're going to do one thing, Kelvin, make sure you got your seed lined up. That's the most important thing. And this segment's brought to you by FP Genetics. Innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to learn more. Okay, we got a RealAg Issues panel, as you just heard. Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, and Jeff Nielsen of Olds, Alberta. Okay, gang, let's continue here with the RealAg Issues panel. Up next, now we talked about this a little bit in the prior segment, the carbon tax. As I've been traveling across the country, this is still an issue that is very, very much on the minds of farmers. Kelvin, what's the status here of Bill C-234? Was it discussed this week at all in the House?
Yes, it received an hour of debate on Tuesday as part of private members' business. The Conservative Party continues to bring it back. So basically, when a bill that's a private member's bill gets discussed, if there isn't a vote called on it, it goes back to the bottom of the list, the order of precedence, and has to rise to the top. Everything before it has to get discussed. But the Conservatives have been using tricks or tools in their toolbox to basically trade it back up the list into whoever has the next slot. And so it sounds like it could be back up for debate this coming week. If not this coming week, then the week after in private members' business again. But as long as the Liberals continue putting up backbench MPs to speak to it and then use up all the time on it, then there isn't any way for the Conservatives or any of the opposition parties, the NDP, are also supporting the bill and this motion to drop the amendments, reject the amendments that the Senate made. As long as the Liberals keep putting people to speak to it and use up the time, there's no way to call a vote for it. And so I expect this game will continue for a few weeks. It is forcing the Liberals to take a clear position on it, though, in terms of they can no longer point the finger at the Senate and say, hey, look, the Senate's independent. They made these changes and prevented it from passing. Now it's Liberal MPs that are blocking this motion from going through.
Now, Jeff, you asked an interesting question via text before the show here. Should the Carbon Trade Alliance try a different avenue? What are you thinking there? Is there a different strategy they should have up their sleeve when it comes to 234? What's your thoughts?
Well, that's why I was going to reach out, trying to get some thoughts. They kind of run the path that they can run so far, and they're still going to the MPs' offices, still going to the senators' offices, this and that. No, more focused on the MPs right now. They're still trying to do that, but the level of I guess the uptake you get, you're going to run a brick wall of the Liberals. They're not going to go anywhere. Can you still, there's fractionation, I think, maybe perhaps with the Bloc not really supporting this as good as they were in the past. Maybe NDP might be a little iffy there too. Like they had solid support from the Greens, from the NDP, the Bloc, during the last process. But that support's kind of waned a bit, I think. So do you focus more on them and have them try to push it through the House too and get that support? I don't know. You're flogging something here that's just not going anywhere probably for a year, and that's throwing it into election time, and it's gone again. So
that's where the
beating a dead horse, Kelvin.
We're not talking horses here. That's a different private members bill.
That's a different bill. Okay. So we can talk about that one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But the Bloc's ag critic, Yves Perron, has said in the House of Commons that he favors passing this bill as is with the amendments from the Senate. So rather than being 8 years plus in length, it would only be 3 years. And it would only apply to grain drying, not to fuels used in heating barns or greenhouses. He's basically said this establishes a precedent, the agricultural exemption precedent, and let's take it before it's too late and isn't on the table anymore, before it falls off the order paper with an election call. That's where the Bloc support is now, as Jeff said, kind of wavering for the full bill, the original version of C-234. It'd be interesting now if it does come to a vote, if the Bloc works together with the Liberals, whether that motion would be defeated, and then we're kind of then basically it's the end of the road for the Ag Carbon Alliance and groups that are looking for the full original C-234.
Oh, okay. So at some point here, Lyndsey, does it not make political sense for the Conservatives to say, you know what, we've had it. There's no way to pass this. There's clearly the Liberals have completely stonewalled farmers. They don't care about food production. They don't care about the price of food at the grocery store. Like, those political talking points, and you just kind of walk away, and that becomes your talking point, so to speak, going into the election, whenever that is.
Yeah, and it's a good point in that realistically, from the Conservatives' perspective, you could say, okay, fine, pass this as it is. We want something different, but we recognize we don't have the votes to get it done, potentially. So pass it as it is, because when we come to power in 2025, we're going to fix it. You could easily turn it and say, fine, do what you want, and away you go. And honestly, the longer this goes on, and the longer, this dropping back down and then coming out and getting stalled, I mean, we are wasting a lot of hot air on something that is not likely, that's a pun, by the way, that is really not likely to get changed to what we originally wanted, let's say. And so, yeah, I think that politically, you've got to look forward and say, what is the likelihood of this? Do we really need to spend all this time on this at this point? Am I saying that that's the best deal that we should have or could have? No. But at the same time, there are other things we could deal with, and the Conservatives could certainly take this. It fits into their narrative already of what they're campaigning on, which is affordability and axing the tax and all of those things. So spin it into your favor and potentially let's move on. I will say just one thing on the Bloc side. I mean, I think it's perhaps somewhat easy on the Bloc side to say, let's take the grain drying exemption and move on, because realistically, Quebec's they have a different scenario anyway for their carbon tax. So the political fallout of just saying, yeah, take the grain drying and go, isn't as big for the Bloc as it would be potentially for somewhere else. So honestly, they don't have a lot to lose on that one. But really, that might be the way forward. And then the Conservatives can take this to the campaign.
The Conservatives, though, I think Poilievre has been compared to a pit bull in the past. They are a dog on a bone right now, and they're not letting go of that bone. They're using every single possibility, every chance they can get to talk about axing the carbon tax right now, whether it's talking about a trade deal with Ukraine. Somehow that gets held up because there's carbon tax implications in it. There's the carbon tax increase coming here on April 1st, and the Conservatives passed a motion, or introduced a motion, I should say, that it didn't pass this week to deal with that broader carbon tax increase coming here in a month and a half. So they're using every chance they can to talk about the carbon tax and axing the tax. So I don't see them giving up. I think they're going to keep trying to bring C234 back for private members to business debate here in the coming weeks.
If I may just continue with the dog on a bone thing, then maybe he should be more of a border collie and herd the sheep where he wants them to go. There, I'm done now. Moving on. Moving on.
I feel like you need to have the sound effects for all the jokes you're telling.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I have buttons. I can hit them. Okay, carrying on.
But clearly the Trudeau government's not getting the message, as we see again in December. The Conservatives gained 4 more points in popularity. They're a 17-point lead now. We're going to get to that in a little bit on the show. Hey, Kelvin, can you fill us in very quickly here? Louis Dreyfus made a big announcement this week on a new plant protein processing facility. A lot of P's in that. There's a joke for you, Lyndsey. This all happening in the face of some other processing plants having some struggles, Merit Foods and others. So what's up?
It's a good question. Yeah, Louis Dreyfus announced plans to build this new pea plant at Yorkton. That's where the company already has its big canola crush facility. They've been in that community for many years, and they're planning. They didn't announce any details on the cost or the volume, the capacity of this plant, but it's going to apparently employ around 60 people, so significant size pea protein facility. It's supposed to be completed by the end of 2025. But yeah, like you said, there are a lot of challenges in the plant protein pea processing side of things North America wide. It seems over the last couple of years, the Merit Functional Foods plant in Winnipeg is still sitting vacant without a buyer. And it just happened the day that Louis Dreyfus announced this new pea plant at Yorkton. Bunge, which is a minority shareholder in the Merit Functional Foods plant, reported its quarterly earnings, and in that report there was a write-down loss of $53 million between Merit Functional Foods and a different pea protein facility or business in Australia. So it's interesting. Louis Dreyfus must have, so of course they're not a startup like a lot of these other companies. They have well-established structure and connections and relationships throughout supply chains. So perhaps they have an in somewhere that they think they can justify and see opportunity that justifies this major investment in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, Jeff, your pulse acres going up or down this year?
Yeah, I don't grow pulses, sorry.
Oh, there you go.
So that's down.
It's down. My combine doesn't like rocks. We don't have, like, there has been talk, there is a small processor near me at Bowden. It's kind of gone through receivership a couple times. There's supposed to be a major expansion there. It hasn't really happened. Talking to a few people that have sold to them, they don't really know what's the lifestyle of it, what's the lifespan of it. There's another one that's supposed to be built at Strathmore, more on the faba bean side. It's been downsized, I believe. It's still trying to find a market. They're finding they're struggling. And as we know, Shaun, the one in Lethbridge a couple of years ago, it spent a lot of money on a building and probably never even processed anything.
Yeah. Well, if you built a facility next to Bowden, at least you could use the inmates for labor, right?
Yeah,
maybe?
No, not there. Remember, we're in Canada. We can't do that. So.
Oh, okay. I'm mixed up. Okay, let's take a break. You're listening to, on that note, we better take a break and clear our heads here.
Yeah.
You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products. Each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's Koch ag.ca.
FP Genetics relentlessly brings innovative new seed genetics to Canadian farms, ensuring growers, breeders, and farmers are supported and viable. Being a valued partner on your farm for decades, you can expect the continuous pursuit of the best genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's strong portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, or contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Lyndsey, do you like soil?
Love it.
Yes. What are you doing on Valentine's? Valentine's Day is a great day to spend with soil, talking soil health, isn't it?
That's all I'm going to do. Sun up to sundown.
Just talking about soil?
That's all I'm going to do.
Well, I have a treat for you. Happening February 13th and 14th at Prairieland Park in Saskatoon. It is the SAS Soil Health Conference. That's right. You can learn from knowledgeable speakers, take in a producer panel. You can hug some soil. You can network with peers in this I may have overpromised on the hugging soil part, but you can. It's a 2-day event happening in Saskatoon. Learn more at sasksoil.ca/soil health conference. Okay. Kelvin, we were talking about Canada and the U.S. relations and just the differences in terms of the overall sentiment of farmers and ranchers currently in January, according to our data and Purdue's Ag Economy Barometer. But you saw some interesting data as far as how reliant some of the provinces are in Canada on trade with the U.S., which also brings some things to light in terms of our reliance on the U.S. market.
Yeah, I wonder if this is also part of some of those clouds on the horizon that Canadian farmers reported in the Sentiment Index survey. And this, we of course have been with U.S. election campaign cycle ramping up. We've heard candidate to former President Trump talk about implementing a 10% tariff on all imports and a significantly higher tariff on imports from China. One of the issues here that I think there is certainly a large difference between Canadian provinces and U.S. states. If you look at a map of Canada, Trevor Toome, economist at the University of Calgary, published some of this information on the Hub this week. If you look at a map of the Canadian provinces, Alberta, 46% of Alberta's GDP is connected with trade in the U.S. Saskatchewan, 36%, Manitoba, 43%, Ontario, 39%. And then you look south of the border, the state of Montana, 11.8% is the highest that I see here. Michigan, 10 points, or sorry, some of Michigan, Wisconsin have some higher numbers. North Dakota, but it's all like 10, 8, 12% in that range. So we are just much more reliant on trade with the U.S. than the U.S. is on trade with us. And so I think that the prospects of risk on that front, especially in our agricultural export focused sectors, is perhaps part of that long-term outlook right now.
Yep. I am a little bit concerned. Been telling audiences about this. The 2026 renegotiation of the CUSMA USMCA agreement. It could be a little bit ugly. And we've got some challenges in front of us. We can overcome them, I'm sure. I'm not saying it's doomsday, but it's definitely not going to be a rubber stamp and we're just going to move on and think that everything's continuing to be glorious. So, Lyndsey, we had some really it kind of caught me off guard. I had lost track of this story, but we've got some bad news on the dicamba front. It's really going to impact the U.S. farmer. And I know you've been following up with Bayer Canada to see what the story is and the impact for Canadian farmers thinking about using dicamba beans. What have you found?
Right. So first off, from the Canadian perspective, we can at least right now breathe a sigh of relief. The changes in the U.S. don't impact Canadian access or Canadian registrations of any dicamba products. So yes, you mentioned Bayer, BASF, Syngenta all offer a dicamba-based over-the-top, as they call it in the States, OTT, over-the-top applications of dicamba for beans, of course. And in the States, though, the federal ruling vacated the 2020 EPA registration of over-the-top dicamba. And that means that as of right now, although we're still waiting to hear if this is effective immediately, if the EPA is going to appeal this ruling, as of right now, any of those beans that have been bought with this herbicide tolerant system, any of the dicamba products that have been bought to be sprayed potentially cannot be used. So the American Soybean Association estimates that it affects about 50 million soybean and cotton acres in the U.S. This is a huge, huge amount, and we are February. These beans are bought. Some of them might even be in sheds by now. We've got jugs of product on farm. We got totes of product on farm. And so we're waiting to hear if this is immediate, then what happens? So there can be at times, and I don't fully understand the U.S. system, but from the reading I've done, there can be at times where they make a ruling that says anything that already was bought can be used, and then it can't be further. I don't think we're going to see that here. I think this is unless there's appeal, and the appeal goes through very quickly, I think this is a stop for over-the-top applications of dicamba.
Is there a company that find more bad luck than Bayer? Like between the Roundup settlements, talking about this global reorganization, it feels like it's just so in flux. I just feel for the customers in this case, feel for the people that work there. Like it's just got to be. It is the bad news keeps on coming.
The Monsanto hangover. In a lot of ways. Now, the EPA essentially they got their wrist slapped on saying that they didn't follow procedure. So that's one thing we should point out is that the ruling basically points out that the EPA skipped over or did not do completely, and I'm paraphrasing, the comments period and the consulting period on this over-the-top registration. So this is a procedural thing,
but that feels like a real technicality. It's like, oh, hey, you didn't.
Well, but that's what the companies are arguing is that this product should be registered because it is safe to use with the parameters that they've put out, and that this is just a procedural thing. And so that's why in Canada, don't worry about it, carry on. Of course, and we point this out, we've done a story as well, and all of us here, I mean, any talk of dicamba systems has always been hand in hand with new requirements for application. I mean, it's like a 10-point checklist of what you have to do, because we do know that, yes, dicamba can drift more so than maybe some other products, and so the companies have worked very hard to put the requirements in place to stop that from happening. Of course, those opposed to this say that that hasn't been enough. But we should point out this is a procedural issue that the EPA has been found to have not done properly.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, having access to products, it is something that we should never take for granted. It's a real thing.
Well, I'm just raises a flag in my mind that we have a solid core of NGOs out there that will leap on this and put a lot of public pressure on PMRA, and they've been, I hate to say it, been seen as weak for several years now. And when it comes to renewal of licenses or permits and stuff like that, there's a certain term. And what I'm worried now, if the APA doesn't work on this fast, that there could be something in there that then PMRA could use to say just temporarily suspend this registration for a while until they could do their review process again, which we know just drags on forever. So I don't use dicamba on my farm, but I know it's a major product for corn, soybeans, and cotton. All right, we don't have cotton in Canada, but it's a concern because it affects every other product we use as well.
That's what you could try this year in Olds, cotton.
Yeah, we could.
I've always wanted to drive a cotton harvester. So, Jeff, if you do plant some cotton, I don't know if you'll ever get to harvest, so we may not have to worry about the cotton harvester part of it, but we can definitely do the planting. And it would be peak Canadian, Kelvin, for us. In most situations, we have to have a Canadian data set. We do not look at American data. Oh, it is beneath us. And then on the reverse, in this situation, maybe the U.S. has identified there's an issue here with some of the process. We need to double check our process to make sure this would be peak Canada if this would have some sort of influence on this registration in Canada.
Yeah, I guess I'm maybe hopeful that this is more of a technicality on process not being followed, not necessarily on products, like not an issue with products that was necessarily highlighted and the reason for this being pulled back. So maybe PMRA will not. Maybe this won't flag them. This is one thing where we've talked about Cody Blois's private members bill, where he's trying to have Canada recognize other jurisdictions' approvals, and I guess it could be a double-edged sword in that front as well. If all of a sudden other jurisdictions have politics come into play and where they remove registrations or approvals for products, if Canada would follow suit if we linked our approval system too closely.
Mm-hmm. Abacus Data has some new polling out for the federal parties. And I alluded to this earlier. The Conservatives, I think, gained 4 more points in December. So we're looking at now a 17-point lead for the Conservatives. They are, the province they are still struggling is Quebec. One has to wonder, though, with this kind of strength across the country, do they even need Quebec to form? And I don't, Kelvin's shaking his head for those of you watching on YouTube. It doesn't look like it, Kelvin.
No, I think the way the numbers shape up now, this would be largely unprecedented, but I don't think that the Conservatives really do need Quebec in terms of gaining the majority of seats for national unity. Sure, that you can make a different case, but in terms of winning an election, Toronto, Vancouver, there's a lot of suburban ridings there that are leaning blue right now, and you look into the Maritimes as well, a lot of Atlantic Canadian Liberal seats at risk. There's a lot of Liberal MPs in the backbenches feeling heat right now.
The question is, are they peaking too early? If the election's not till the fall of 25, are they peaking too early? That's, Jeff, what are your thoughts?
That's my biggest fear because you just don't know the weather forecast. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in 6 months or a year from now. I hate to say Poilievre needs to still try to polish himself a bit better and get his foot out of his mouth half the time. Let the Liberals go down that path if they want to, but there could be something happen that could be the golden moment of the Liberal Party, and it could be resurrected overnight. And I'm worried for next year and 3 months, I guess.
Well, Abacus is starting to do sort of like we've seen in the U.S. Like, hey, if Biden wasn't the candidate or Trump wasn't the candidate, would you change your vote? Same thing. Abacus has been working on polling regarding if there's a change in leadership with the Liberals, which I kind of highlight out is going to happen. He's going down with the ship. would you change your vote? And I think it was young voters that were more likely to be switching. Lyndsey, I guess, how do you read this scene? Because, since the Conservatives changed their messaging to affordability being the focus, it totally different numbers, and it has resonated with Canadians. It's been a real success story from a branding perspective.
Absolutely. And I think we are likely 18 to 20 months away, right, from October 2025. So there is a long time. And honestly, I think every month, it just becomes less and less likely that it's going to be any time before then. So we sort of are setting our sights on October 2025. And realistically, especially if you look at the farmer sentiment index, look at, what's happening with interest rates, doesn't look like we're going to have them coming down anytime soon or nearly as fast as people want. So this message of affordability likely has legs to really carry them through to this election. And frankly, the Liberals they haven't caught on. I don't think that, perhaps they need to actually sit down and be like, what could we do on this? But no government is very good at saying, hey, we've done a poor job on something.
No,
right? No government, right? You always wait till you're in power and then blame the previous government. You never take responsibility while you're in power. So, that might be the only thing that would save them. We are coming up, February 28th is the 40th anniversary, I think, of the Walk in the Snow. Right? Something like that. So we're coming up to that. We've talked about it before. Don't think it's going to happen.
No.
But realistically, I think that would be the Liberals' only chance of holding on to power is if they were smart, change the leader, change the entire platform, really, for looking forward. That's really their only chance, I think, at this point.
But to change a leader, who do you change to?
Well, that's a good question.
Cody Blois. I'm in. Done. Because he says yes to coming on this show. So I'll just point that out.
Yeah.
They have no rising stars. They burnt out the ones they thought they had.
Well, hey, look at the Conservatives. It took them like 3 tries, right? So
exactly. And the Liberals.
Who wants to step up? You want to be the next person after the next person. Okay.
Or the third.
Let's take a break. We've got more. And our Super Bowl picks. I know Lyndsey has been digging. This is what she's been doing all week. It hasn't been agricultural stuff. She's been just working on FanDuel, trying to make sure she's got all her bets in place properly, all those parlays. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure Oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday for the RealAg Issues Panel. Jeff Nielsen of Olds, Alberta, Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture. We got to talk about Bill 282. It was discussed in the Senate this week. We saw Senator Black stand up and address it. I don't have the audio for you here today. You can definitely search Senator Black's Twitter profile and you can listen to the full, I think it was about a 15-minute speech. In my mind, that's as close as you can get to saying you're against 282 as you can without saying it, but he is going to vote for it to go to committee. Jeff, I know you listened to the audio. What was your take?
I found it interesting. He was making some comparisons to other sectors of Canadian industry and how maybe they would want special protectionism if they could. We've seen issues with, of course, the softwood lumber over the U.S. over a long time, and other coal. What if China, or what if we see restrictions on coal exports and stuff like that? So there's some comparisons he's using. What kind of worries me a bit about is he references it's not an ag bill, it's a international trade bill, but it has a lot of repercussions to ag, and he's trying to point that out, especially the 90% of ag that is dependent on trade. I'd rather see this bill killed before it goes to committee, in my personal opinion. Once it gets to committee, it'll probably get hung up in committee for quite some time. Who knows? But I'd just rather see it be dealt with now rather than later.
Well, one thing he's very correct on, it is very contentious, and it has really pitted a lot of the agricultural industry against each other. Kelvin, also this week was the Dairy Farmers of Canada annual meeting, and it was interesting. You don't see the Canadian Trade Minister, Mary Ng, in a lot of ag meetings, but she showed up for the dairy meeting. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a file. They obviously have to work close together with her, with the U.S. and New Zealand challenging Canada's dairy import rules. And so, yeah, she spoke at the DFC AGM or did a bit of a fireside chat from what we can tell. And I'm curious, so what some of the points were that she made. And it is, certainly shows the power that Dairy Farmers of Canada continues to have when it comes to federal politics, that they can have the trade minister show up at their meeting. Not every other group can say that.
I do not have enough time to go into some sort of a rant, so I'm going to park it, and you'll have to stay tuned to next week. But the invitation is still open, like it has been for the past 4 or 5 years, for Minister Ng as the trade minister to actually talk to farmers and come on to this program. Open invitation. Just all she has to do is accept. That's all she's got to do. Let's get to the Super Bowl. It is this weekend. Swifties unite. My daughter's emailing me or texting me yesterday about, hey, how do I watch the Super Bowl, Dad? I have to. What is going on? My wife made plans for Sunday not to do something else. We're going to watch the game in a pub. I don't know what has happened to my life, but it's like I've been dreaming for my wife to love football, and all of a sudden she does, and now it's very, very uncomfortable. Okay, so picks. We got 49ers versus Chiefs. There's a number of storylines. Jeff, who are you taking?
Actually, I'm going to be watching the Waste Management Open in Phoenix
He watches
myself.
golf.
I own a golf
doesn't
simulator
care.
business, so yeah. We'll have it on big screen. I don't know. I'll watch it. I'm more interested in the side games going on to see if Taylor Swift can. If her team wins, will she run for president or something like that?
That's what's at stake.
You sound like the farmers from yesterday's show. The only person that knew anything about football for the most part was Colleen Redlick from Corteva. Okay, Kelvin, who are you taking?
Oh boy, it's a toss-up. I'm not sure. I think Kansas City. I'm going to go with Kansas City in the big game again. Mahomes, Travis Kelce, get it done another time.
Okay, Lyndsey, who are you taking?
Well, of course, Taylor's version. So 100% the Chiefs. And I, too, am looking forward to all the side stories that spin off from this and the ads. So, yeah, I honestly, like, if I were trying to win money as to which team is going to win, I probably wouldn't take them. But I love it. And I love the Taylor story. And I love Mahomes. So, yeah, Chiefs.
We do know that she's not playing, right? Like, we know that,
allegedly, but, like, don't put anything past her. I'm just saying.
Okay. Well,
she'll get more camera time than half the players.
Yeah, exactly.
Disappointed in y'all. I'm going with the 49ers. I don't know how you like. I love the Brock Purdy story, Mr. Irrelevant, who being the quarterback of the Super Bowl champs 49ers. I also like Kyle Shanahan and Christian McCaffrey's amazing. I've liked him all the way back when he was a college player in Stanford. If you paid attention to any of my college picks through the season, this means that because I'm picking the 49ers, it means the Chiefs are winning. Because I was awful at the end of the season when it was coming to picking who is going to win. So there is that. Okay, enjoy the Waste Management Open, Jeff, and your low attention to the Super Bowl, but have yourself a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay, and Lyndsey, all the best.
Bye.
Kelvin, get out there and do some sledding before all that snow melts.
It's not enough. There's a lot of ice. More skating. We'll be at the hockey rink instead.
Roads are slippery. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll check in with you again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Authority 480 herbicide from FMC. Authority 480 herbicide delivers outstanding control of the toughest broadleaf weeds in wheat, pulse crops, flax, mustard, and more. See your local retailer today for more information.